Last night, a Vox reporter called Kelsey Piper DM'd Sam Bankman-Fried. She didn't expect him to respond, but he did. And Sam Bankman-Fried isn't too happy about that because, as you can see here, he said he talked to a friend of his, and his friend published the messages, and they weren't intended to be public. Which is kind of funny because once you read this, you kind of see, like, she's asking some pretty fucking specific questions that, maybe a reporter would ask if they're trying to get a story about you. But I guess Sammy Boy, just didn't realize that. And if I was under investigation by the SEC and whoever the fuck else, I certainly would not be talking to reporters, even if I viewed them as, my friend. Which I wouldn't view this lady as my friend, considering, she interviewed Sam one time several months ago. But I don't know their personal relationship. Maybe they talked all the time. So anyway, I guess we'll get into it. Here is the start of the Twitter DMs. And she asked him to start out, you said a lot of stuff about how you wanted to make regulations, just good ones. Was that pretty much just PR too? And he says, yeah, basically just PR. Fuck those regulators. They make everything worse. There's no one out there making sure good things happen and bad things don't. And she follows that up by saying, doesn't it seem like some kind of protections would be good though? And he says, yeah, it would be good, but regulators can't do it. And then another follow-up here. She says, you couldn't do it, and CZ isn't doing it, so who could do it? And he says, yeah, basically no one will. No one in the rest of finance is doing it either, which is kind of bogus if you ask me. Because a lot of these publicly traded companies on the stock market, they at least have, regular earnings reports and shit like that makes it, a little more accountable than what a lot of these offshore exchanges are doing. Plus they actually have fucking accounting departments, and FTX apparently did not have an accounting department besides Sam himself and Caroline. And basically, he just keeps harping on that point, like it fucking is just useless. These regulators are destroying the U.S. The Office of Foreign Asset Control, I believe that's what that is, undermining U.S. interests globally and is threatening the U.S.'s status as a superpower. And basically, she's starting to put together a picture of who Sam really is. And she says, so basically you think that the good guys are not actually good. No one's doing anything good for good reasons. And whoever is the biggest in the space gets to decide what good is. And if you have to do some sketchy stuff along the way, people still like them as long as they win. Is that right? And basically he replies with some little thought that he has here, a little quote. Only the rich can invest, and only they can make or lose money. Which is true. I mean, the winners write history, I suppose. But basically he says he didn't want to do sketchy stuff. There are huge negative effects from it, and he didn't mean to do it, which is kind of BS. Each individual decision seemed fine, and I didn't realize how big their sum was until the end, which also seems like BS because, some fucking normal exchange who's backed 1-to-1 isn't going to lend out their fucking customer assets to another company that they owned based on the collateral of their own token, which could fucking fluctuate massively because this is crypto and their fucking token has no utility. I don't think that was a fine decision. But anyway, moving on. She interviewed him in the past, like I mentioned, and she said she re-listened to the conversation about whether you should do unethical shit for the greater good. And basically he's like, what did I say? And he's like, nah, you shouldn't do it. It's bad. There's more risk of doing harm than good. But you should track that out. It's not worth it. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, so was that also PR? And he's like, man, all the dumb shit I said, it's not true. Not really. And she goes, yeah, I thought it might not be. And then he goes, everyone goes around pretending that perception reflects reality. It doesn't. Some of the decade's greatest heroes will never be known, and some of the most beloved people are basically shams. And he's saying, the winners write history. If you go around acting good, it doesn't mean that you're good. I mean, I guess that's true to some extent, but there are a lot of good people out there, and I don't think that we need to be this cynical about the world because it's probably not a good thing, right? I think we need to have some faith in our fellow humans. And then, moving on, she says, so you kind of don't believe in, doing unethical shit as anything other than a judgment we bestow upon losers. Which is kind of funny. And basically he says, yeah, basically CZ a month ago was known as a guy who does unethical shit, and now he's a hero? Is it because he's virtuous, or is it because he had the bigger balance sheet and so he won? She says, well, I can see why you did not give that answer in interviews. And he says, heh. She says, so the ethics stuff, mostly a front. People will like you if you win and hate you if you lose. That's how it all works, right? He says, yeah, I mean, that's not all of it, but it's a lot of it. And basically, moving on, she says, you're really good about talking about ethics for someone who saw his game with winners and losers. He said, yeah, it had to be. That's what reputations are made of. And then he says something funny. I feel bad for those who get fucked by this dumb game we woke Westerners play where we say all the right shibboleths, and so everyone likes us. And basically, moving on, she kind of asks him about the customer deposits being invested. And she says, yeah, that was bullshit, right? And he says, no, it was right. It was factually accurate. And she says, but like the deposits were not there and you couldn't return them. So what the fuck are you talking about? Or did you just mean it was technically Alameda? And he says, yeah, FTX wasn't doing that. But, Alameda, which is owned by the FTX parent group, yeah, they were doing it. And then she says, so FTX technically wasn't gambling with their money. FTX just loaned their money to Alameda, who was also owned by the FTX parent group, to gamble the money, and also collateralized against FTT. And he says, yeah, I thought Alameda had enough collateral to cover it. You know what I'm saying? And basically, she says, I get how you could have gotten away with it, but I guess that seems fucking sketchy. And he says, yeah, sometimes life just creeps up on you. He's so quirky, bro. Then she asks about Luna. She's like, yo, did Luna fuck you over? And is that when the customer deposits start getting lent back? And he says, yeah, our accountant team was fucking brain dead, and we were trading on margin, and the fucking, liabilities built up over time. But yeah, he's like basically messing with accounting. I didn't realize it until a few weeks ago, which could have totally been avoided. You know what I'm saying? This man had a company that was worth $32 billion. I'm sure he could have afforded to hire fucking 100 accountants who would have made sure his shit was fucking squeaky clean and all shit was taken care of. But nah, bro. He decided to, have Caroline and him be the accounting duo. I mean, I don't know if that's factually accurate, but it kind of seems like that was the case. They were the only people who had full access to the accounting records. And as was reported by a news outlet, Sam had a fucking back door built into his accounting software that allowed him to, move around money under the table and unnoticed from regulators. And then she asked him, if you could start all over again, would you just take more careful accounting, never touch customer funds, never go into crypto? And he says, careful accounting plus offboard Alameda from FTX so an FTX could live on its own. Are there people who told you to be more careful? Are there people you would have listened to? And he says, it's odd. I mean, maybe, but not really. And those who did, they did on other things, not that. He's referencing customer deposits. And he says, it's odd. Everyone was so worried and concerned about dumb shit we definitely wouldn't do, and that made no sense. I don't know how the fuck he didn't realize this. I think he did realize it, but basically, she's like, yeah, but they didn't ask you about lending out customer funds? Seems like an obvious thing for them to worry about. He says, yeah, but it's complicated. It wasn't quite lending them out. It was messier and more organic than that. Each step in isolation, rational and reasonable, and then when I finally added it up all last week, it wasn't. Most exchanges did some variant on what we did, which is not an excuse at all. So let's take, for example, you have a serial killer. You're also a serial killer, for this example, and you go out and you kill 10 people. When the police arrest you, you say, yo, but that other serial killer in town did he killed 20 people. Like I shouldn't be in trouble for this. Like, just because someone else did something bad doesn't mean like that it's excusable. You know what I'm saying? Like he's also saying that they did it more intentionally than him. And I think that if you're lending out fucking customer deposits against your own token as collateral, then you're probably doing it slightly intentionally. And then she's like, so there was no point of like, let's lend out customer deposits, just various financial instruments that ended up adding up to that. And you didn't even see that they'd added up to that. And he's like, yeah. He's like, oh, FTX doesn't have a bank account. I guess people can wire to Alameda to get money on FTX. Oh, fuck, it looks like people wired $8 billion to Alameda, and oh, God, we basically forgot about the stub account that corresponded to that, and so it was never delivered to FTX. So I guess what he's saying here is that he was like, yo, Alameda has all of our money, but if people need it, then we can just get it back, right? Basically, he goes on to talk about his emotional state, so to speak, revolving around the situation. He says, I fucked up multiple times. He's like, it was maybe my biggest single fuck up. And she goes, oh, that one thing everyone told me to do, fire emoji react. Everything would be 70% fixed right now if I I'm trying to guess, but I have no idea. Chapter 11, bankruptcy. That's the fuck up, dude. Let me tell you, that's the fuck up. Like, should have just wrote it out and kept trying to make the $8 billion back, she says. And Sam responds with, if I hadn't done that, withdrawals would be opening up in a month with customers fully whole. But instead I filed, and the people in charge of it are trying to burn it all to the ground out of shame. I might still get there, but after way more collateral damage and only 50-50. And basically what he's referencing is that he's trying to get a bunch of VCs or whoever the fuck else to invest $8 billion into him to pay back the customers, which doesn't seem likely. I mean, who the fuck's going to trust this guy? And also on top of that, basically, if you're in bankruptcy, the creditors and the court has to approve new investors. And I mean, that's just another fucking step beyond, actually getting the investors, which seems unlikely. And then he talks about some of his partners. I believe Gary was the co-founder and Nishad was, I don't know what Nishad did. I think maybe he was the head of finance or something like that. But basically, he says, yeah, if they come back, it will have a way better chance of getting whole with our investors and getting the money back to the fucking customers. And then he also says, we can win a jurisdictional battle versus Delaware. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. And he says, yeah, Gary and Nishad are gone. And he says, yeah, scared. Or Gary is scared and Nishad is ashamed and guilty. And basically she says, yeah, Nishad was way more into ethics / not being sketchy. And he's like, yeah, it hit him hard. I mean, it hit all of us hard, but it hit him hard. It seems like you have more of a sense of yourself to fall back on, more of a sense that you are only wrong if you lose. And he was more like, wow, we stole money from people who trusted us. He's like, Sam's like, the world is never so black and white. And then she asked him about the hack, which is kind of interesting. And he's like, yo, bro, that was like a ex-employee or malware on an ex-employee's computers. Yeah, I mean, just going out on a limb here, I feel like it could have been him himself, but can't accuse him of that. Possibility, right? It's a possibility. She asks him, what's next? What's your plan? He says, I have 2 weeks to raise $8 billion. That's basically all that matters for the rest of my life. And she says, well, I hope that depositors get the money back. But I gotta say, I have no idea how anyone could possibly pull that off from this starting point. He's like, well, a month ago, I was one of the world's greatest fundraisers. Now I'm a fallen wreckage of one. But there's one thing about being fallen. There are people who will know what that's like and who want to do something else for somebody that no one else did for them. And basically, yeah, this guy's a fucking clown. I don't think that he's going to be able to get the money back. So yeah, I guess we'll see where this goes. It's a really interesting story. It kind of just keeps fucking going and never stops. But yeah, see you in the next one.